Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostu Te Vyasa Vishana Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Rudatuhe Namaha Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapada Kramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidhu sura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyaha Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So we are on the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and here we are actually looking at a totally different subject here. So far, the subject has always been us, understanding us as not the body, mind, intellect, but as something different from that. Now, having understood this, now we are moving into a subject which is now, what is there beyond me? What is, am I the only person living in this world? Are there other people? So this is where we start the 7th chapter with Krishna advising Arjuna, who's a very, very intelligent person and who can now actually comprehend that there is life beyond himself. Because if you remember in the first chapter, he thought that he was the entire world. He was the one who was getting affected by the war and everything. But now with Lord Krishna's help in the first 6 chapters, he's now slowly understanding that he's really not this individual person, but that he's actually connected with something higher. So that is where we left off at the end of the 6th chapter. So in the 7th chapter, in the beginning itself, we see Lord Krishna is now preparing Arjuna. And how does he prepare Arjuna? He first starts with very clearly saying that, hey, Arjuna, listen to what I'm saying here. I'm not saying something which is something very easy. I'm actually exposing you to something really way beyond yourself. So the first 3 verses, he's actually trying to prepare him by telling that there is something that is coming up for which I need your complete attention. So he says, Shrunu, tat Shrunu. He says this, Samagram mam nyasyasi, you will now understand without any doubt, asamshayam samagram, so without any doubt itself, you're going to understand essentially what I'm going to say. So typically, when we think about listening skills, we think it is enough if I'm listening through my ears, right? So here, actually, Krishna is telling Arjuna that you have to listen with your complete mind and intellect focused upon me. Only then you're going to develop clarity. And this clarity is very, very important for us in truly understanding about who I am. In the common world, we say that we need good clarity for making good decision making. And for decision making, we say that, well, you got to have good emotional intelligence, you have to have critical thinking, logical reasoning, etc. But decision making really comes by having that clarity of mind. And so here in the very first verse, he tells him that, develop this clarity because I'm going to now give you knowledge about me. In verse 2, he says, I'm going to give you the knowledge about me. And this knowledge, you'll be able to really make it into wisdom or vijnanam only by practice. So by practice, you will be able to understand this. And when you practice, you are actually going to evolve within your own self. This human being that who I thought I'm here in this world, just going to work, taking care of my family and everything, I'm now going to evolve into something totally different. And that is why this rarity of knowledge is spoken about. The rarity is this knowledge is not available for anyone and everyone. So does that mean that, some people are excluded? No, that is not what he's trying to say. He's trying to show that this knowledge can be made available for us only when I myself become ready for it. And that is where, that first shloka, he says, you have to have very clear thinking, very clear understanding. You've got to be able to practice. And once you practice, then that knowledge which I'm giving you will now become wisdom, So this is just a very simple quote which I found of Gurudev's, where he says, with knowledge, practice is very important, and that gives you doubly quick results. So we may listen to a little bit, but if I put it into practice, so this knowledge then leads to a conviction. And when I have the conviction, then I really start to work upon myself, And when I start to work on putting the sadhanas, that leads to that knowledge of my connection to the very highest self. So knowledge is like theory, it's like my chemistry experiment where I know that if I put sodium, sodium, which is, this is just experiment that I remember from my days. Sodium as a pure metal, when you put it into water, it immediately starts fizzing and it forms sodium hydroxide, But how would I ever know this if I just read a textbook, right? I have to actually go to the lab, do that experiment, see it in front of me, then I get convinced. So when I get convinced, then I start to put that into practice. So too here in Bhagavad Gita, which is, one of the, is sometimes it's called the fourth Upanishad. It's giving us a knowledge, but that knowledge needs to be put into practice. And only when I do that, then that becomes Vijnanam. So these were the things that we spoke about in the first two shlokas here. Now for the third shloka, I want to ask all of you, when I just mentioned about how that we have to develop the clarity of mind in order to evolve, right? So when we look at human evolution, what comes to your mind? How do you define an evolution of a human being?
Is it with respect to physical structure?
That is how.
With respect to mental structure.
Correct. So this is how we look at evolution of human being, right? I mean, this is what Charles Darwin had always had proposed in his, thesis of human, where somebody who has graduated from, they have all these names of, Homo erectus, Homo, some very Greek names, actually. I think it sounds like Greek and Latin, literally Greek and Latin, Homo rapaticus or something, and Australopithecus, those names. And then finally, the last one is Homo sapiens, right? This is how we really understand human evolution. In fact, we don't even think beyond that. We say, oh yeah, I'm considered to be the roof and crown of roof and crown of creation. And, this is how we look at it. But my question to you is, as much as we discussed all this thing last time about how, a human being can be defined as a stone, human being, plant, animal, etc. What does that really mean for us? Because this is a very important question. If I don't recognize how I have to grow within myself, why would I even do anything about it, right? So it's a very powerful question, which each one of us has to get convinced that I need to evolve. I need to change myself. I need to, so what does that word human evolution mean to each one of you, So that's my question.
Sunitha, I would think like the maturity, mind maturity level, like even the gunas, like, towards the sattva more. I know that each person will have little bit of tamas, little bit of rajas.
Correct.
But evolving towards the sattva more, the maturity, that's what I'm thinking. So
very good. Excellent. Yeah, you're right. It is growing towards a sattvic mode of doing things. Yeah.
I read somewhere a long time ago that we are here on this earth, which is kind of a spirit school. You're in a school to learn about your spirit and grow spiritually. That stayed with me, to evolve spiritually.
To evolve spiritually, exactly. So
this is like a school, spirit
like
school.
Yeah. So I mean, this world is like a lab where we are experimenting within ourselves and we are growing spiritually, right? That's how you're looking at it, Meenu. Yeah.
Yeah, learning every day new lessons about.
Right. Any other thoughts on what you would say is an evolvement of a human being? I see.
So maybe like everybody has this lower skills and the higher skills. So slowly, transform or giving up the lower skills and trying to become more, get practice to know the higher self slowly.
So how would you define lower and higher skills, Jayashree?
All these, we consider ourselves as an individual, then everything becomes me and the I-ness, remove the I-ness and, not get angry, not be patient, be kind. And so look at everything or try to love unconditionally or without attachment, or see the word attachment.
Very nice. Very nice. You all are really hitting the right points, where, like you said, kindness, and it's not just about me, myself, but me in relation to everything else. And when it comes to relation to everything else, I have to be patient. I cannot expect everyone to behave the way I want them to behave. So I need to develop that kindness and the compassion. So in all, like you said, and then even what you said about the gunas, tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. Tamasic is where I really think only about myself. Sattvic is where, again, I consider myself as part of everyone. So I start to, so that is really the human evolution, right? So human evolution, like even here, that's where, so plants, they're always not by themselves. They are taking things from the atmosphere, they're taking the oxygen, giving out, or, in this case, taking in carbon dioxide, giving us oxygen, and then we take oxygen, give out carbon dioxide. So they see that synergy, the symbiosis, everything is so connected. That is how they're living. So tamasic is like the stones where there is no, it's just existence, like we said. And then we have the consciousness part of it. And then the consciousness, here, of course, it's a very simple diagram. We cannot take it by the way it is just given. But the point is, where we are, as we are evolving, we are looking at more and more the connectedness between ourselves and others. And finally, we recognize at the highest level of the Mahatmas that there is nothing, there is no other, there is only one. And so that is the highest level of human evolution, right? So this part of it is why in the third shloka, he says, and this again will come up later, which is Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. So a human being, even though a person is born as a human being, that person has to have the knowledge. And that is the second shloka is saying, the knowledge needs to be understood that I am part of everyone. So only such a person who understands the knowledge surrenders Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate, he surrenders onto me, knowing ultimately that I am the cause of all causes. That's how the whole shloka goes. And such great people are very, very, very rare. And so it takes a lot of lives. We got to keep on working on ourselves, In fact, instead of looking at many, many lives, if I can take every day as one life, and I take the time during that day to work upon this myself, work upon this equipment that has been given to me, by which I can understand my true nature. Who am I? That itself is a fantastic, great thing. So what do we mean by, in this human birth, I need to work upon myself? And these are the things, this list I saw in one of the references, which is so beautifully given here, which is, instead of thinking of me, myself all the time, now, how can I think of higher things, better things, better things in the sense of, how can I be of greater service to the world? How can I be connected to the world? And again, Meenu, I don't want to embarrass you, but, I want to give this beautiful example which she follows in her house. She has this big 25-pound bag of seed. Every morning she goes out and she distributes this in the yard. And lo and behold, all these animals and birds and everyone, they come every day and they feast on this. So the connectedness that we are establishing between me and the beings everywhere, we're all connected. I mean, in Kerala, now I literally, earlier I used to be very afraid of snakes and all that. Now, Kerala, this is such a mountainous country, so much amount of vegetation, everything. You see small snakes going around, Now you really don't feel that scared of it because, they also have to live there. They have to be part of it. The other thing is now in India, of course, you see stray dogs everywhere. The first time when you come, you're like, oh my God, you're afraid of these dogs. But pretty soon you find those dogs are not afraid of you. They don't bark or anything. So you become part of. So slowly, I'm giving you very, very basic examples. But my point is you become part of the environment and you start to think about how me and the dog can live in the same place. Me and the snake can live in the... So slowly, you start to think about higher things. And then second thing, what we do is we look at the work I do. The work I'm doing is not just for myself, but that work is a means. The work is a process by which I get rid of my own me self. So the word action is now replaced by the word karma. The minute I say karma, then a very different connotation comes to my mind. I no longer think of myself as, I got to do this, I got to do that, I better have this to-do list, everything, it's beyond that. Now I try to look upon that same action as something that I do it because I need to do it, but I don't get stressed out. If it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. So the word karma becomes has a different connotation. Then I recognize what is knowledge. So I try to recognize what do you mean by knowledge? So is all these things really possible? Then second thing I try to understand is, am I doing anything just to gain punyam, punyam and papam we say, punya and papa, which again we know as any action which I do in such a way that it's harmful for the environment, it comes back to me because I'm again connected to the universe, and whatever I put into the universe comes back to me. So that way I try to understand what is punyam and papam. Then I try to understand also the knowledge in the sense, all this time I would have gone to the universities and colleges to study about chemistry or biology or economics and all those things to earn a living. That is apara vidya. We call that apara. And para means high, the higher, and the corollary when I add which means the lower. So all this time I've been studying, getting degrees all for that. But soon I understand that there is something even beyond that. So these are all the things, really the requirements, which is part of the evolution, Second thing is I try to look upon myself and see what are all those obstacles which is preventing me from understanding that higher knowledge. And those are the things called vasanas. So what are my unique, we say USP, what is my unique selling point, right? My unique USP is these vasanas. How can I really get rid of that? Then can I really look at myself or herself, I say herself, to introspect and find, why am I here? I don't think we really ask this question to ourselves a lot, why am I here? Who am I? We don't ask these questions because, again, my mind is so full of stuff. So I need to sit down and figure out that question, which is very important. It's one of the very first questions. If I can come to that level of asking, that means I'm on the right path. Even to come to that level of asking, why am I here? What made me, who brought me here? Then can one visualize the possibility of evolution and envision a greater goal in life? Can one attain worldly objectives or spiritual goals? So all these kind of questions, when I ask, that really shows that I'm a human, because animals will not ask these questions. Any one of these questions, if I can ask, then that is the idea of the human birth. And that's why the third shloka is addressing all those points. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam, kaschin mam veti tatvataha. So rarely, if at all there is somebody, there's just very, very rare people who can ask these questions. And that is why when Pradeep asked the question last time about striving for perfection, basically we are all just wanting to go there. It's just a question of how far we are from going there. And among them, there's very, very few people who have actually reached that path. For many of us, we are just pulled back all the time, by every time, we get to this understanding, then suddenly something else pulls me back. And who's pulling me back? It's my own vasanas, my own thought of a situation which came about, for example, if I face a certain challenge of, somebody, or I'm just using an extreme case, if I lost my job or whatever, there are two ways I could look at it. One is that, why me, kind of a thing, why of all the people, why was I fired or something like that? I could look at it that way. Or the other hand, I can look at it as, in this world of so many multiple variables, maybe this losing a job was trying to tell me that I'm ready for something higher, So I could look at that as that way. So every situation, as Meenu pointed out beautifully, we are in this world, and the world is a lab where I can grow spiritually and evolve. And so this shloka, third shloka, which is really trying to say that tattvataha, very, very rarely is a person who has attained that perfection, who has understood that ultimate nature of myself, which is, so these three shlokas is where, Lord Krishna brings Arjuna up to speed, preparing him for the higher knowledge. So that's why these three shlokas were, started with Maya Asaktaha Mana Partha, Yogam Yunjanmadashayaha, Asamsham Samagramma Yathagnyasyasi Tachrunu, Ne Jnanam Teham Savijnanam Idam Vakshyam Aham. He's saying, I will tell you Asheshataha without any doubt. And knowing that, Yajnatva Neha Bhuyon Yat Jnatavyam Avashishyate. So there is absolutely nothing to be known. I'll tell you the total, that knowledge, which is the mother or father of all knowledges. I will tell you that. And once you know that knowledge, you will not be stressed. You'll be totally calm. You will understand everything that is going on. And you'll be calm, smiling, peaceful all the time. So that is the thing that he says. And this third shloka, which we just said. And if Arjuna was thinking that, wow, there are so many species, so many people, how do you know that some people have attained? He says, yeah, you're right. There are very, very few people who have attained this, but among those people, you can also be one of them. So having said this, now Krishna launches into telling him what that high knowledge is. But even to understand the high knowledge, he brings up, first to say, what is that lower knowledge? Okay, so he says, okay, I am that knowledge. I'm going to tell you that knowledge. And my knowledge, who I am, is, you can look at it in two different levels. One level, which you will understand right away, but the other level, you may not have thought about it that way. So he says, think about it that way, and he gives him that. So I wanted to give you this picture here. Like, for example, when we see the whole earth, the whole universe, the way our mind goes today is, in this earth, there is these waters, these mountains, these buildings, the people, the rocks, that's how we break this whole earth too, right? It's just all kinds of things is how we look at it. But if you take it and boil it down and down and down and down, you will find, again, as a chemist, I would say that, well, it's made up of 115 elements or whatever, right? But beyond those elements, we don't think about the fact that there is also space in there is fire there, and there's water. Water, of course, we can think about it. The earth part of it, we can very easily relate to. When we say earth is the solid stuff, solid minerals and all that stuff. But beyond that, you also have this. So simple example, right now, of course, it's not fall time. Right now, everything is growing. But, during fall time, okay, you take all these leaves and all that, which have changed colors, and you sort of keep it in a heap in your garden. And if by mistake, if some water goes in there and becomes moist, you will see there is some reaction going on, There will be some amount of heat that is there. Where did the heat come from? That heat is nothing but the fire element in the stuff. And even this happens with even our physical bodies, I mean, today, what do we do? Again, maybe I'm giving an example which may sound a little strong, but suppose this physical body, if you don't cremate it, or I guess even when you bury it, let's take when you bury a body, right? What happens to the physical structure? In the beginning, it will actually, all the gases, all the air stuff, everything comes out. Then slowly and slowly, the fire element also, there is a heat that also comes out of the body. So the water is gone, the heat is gone, the fire is gone, and slowly it starts shrinking. The space in the body, every cell, I mean, we know that every cell has a lot of space in them, so the space that is also gone. And finally, whatever is left is only the earth material, the skeleton and all that. If you break it down, it is nothing but calcium and phosphorus, and of course, a carbon, hydrogen, some amount of minerals. So ultimately, this is all that is left behind, right? So this is what is the lower nature. That is what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna. Hey, I'm telling you what my lower nature is. The lower nature is all this stuff here. So this part of it, and in our scriptures, in our texts, this has been broken down as two different aspects. One, I mean, if you look at Western textbooks today, you will see earth as being defined by, as I mentioned, all those things before, the earth and the mountains and all that. But in our scriptures, from the beginning itself, you actually look at this whole world in two forms. One is what you can see by the ears, by our five senses, what you can feel, that's the gross elements. And the other aspect is these subtle elements. And some of you who have studied even our earlier texts, like, Tattva, Atma Bodh, and also Viveka Chudamani, in many of them, we understand that these five elements, maybe next time I'll try to bring one more diagram. I have somewhere I put a PowerPoint together. So these five elements, they actually have the gross part of it, the physical aspect which you can feel from your senses, but there is a subtle element also of each one of them. The earth, for example, has gross thing which we can feel and touch and everything, but there's a subtle aspect. The fire, same thing. The space, the same thing. Water, same thing. So all these subtle aspects, they're called the tanmatras, and these actually combine and they produce this. So there's a whole process called panchikarana, which is not really part of what we are discussing here. But to give you this idea that in our texts, we already have thought about the subtle aspects. And these subtle aspects cannot be seen or felt or anything by physical, the five senses. And this is where even a mind and intellect are made from those subtle aspects of a lot of these elements. And so we have not yet discovered a subtle instrument which can measure the subtle things. That's the greatness of the Indian knowledge system, where mind and intellect and all these subtle aspects have been talked about. So this is just to give you an idea of what is coming with regard to where when Arjuna is wanting to know the nature of Krishna. So Krishna is then telling him about the fact that he is made of the lower and the higher. So the shloka we just chanted last time, where Lord Krishna is talking about the lower self of himself, Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu Kammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme Bhinna Prakriti, Bhinna Prakriti Rashtada. So Ashta, Bhinna Prakriti. So Prakriti is that lower self, what he's telling, the lower nature. It is made up of 8 things. Ashta, it is 8-fold. And what are those 8-fold? They are the 5 elements which I just talked about, which is Bhumihi, earth, Apaha, water, Analaha, fire, Vayuhu, air, and then Kam, which is the space. So all these 5 are the lower self. But along with this, the subtle aspects of these elements, which, like I said, next time I'll put the slide which will show you that process. But Manaha and Buddhi, the mind and the intellect, and also the Ahankara. Ahankara, or the I-ness, egoism. Here he said ego not in a negative way, but ego to bring the aham bhava, the I part of it. So all these are the 8-fold. So this 8-fold, he says, is my lower nature. So as an example, as an also prelude to the next part of it, think about, an electric bulb, right? An electric bulb, or even a microwave, a micro, or let's take a more modern example, a microwave. Electric bulb is the standard example that Swami Chinmayananda Gurudev always uses. In a microwave, we have the box and we have all the mechanism, all the parts, everything which is there to make the microwave. But until I connect the microwave to the power switch and the electricity that flows through the microwave, my food is not going to get heated, and I turn the power button on, right? So you need, first of all, you need the whole equipment in its complexity, everything. But I also need that electricity to flow through it in order to make the microwave a microwave, right? So that is why here he says, Krishna says that, I am a mixture of these 2 principles. One is my higher self, and the other one is my lower self. So the lower self is the apara prakriti, or this 5 elements, including my mind, my intellect, and the ego. Those, all of them, they form the lower self. But there is something else which is beyond that, which I really make everything move, So that part of it is the para prakriti. That aspect is my higher self. So the higher self makes the lower self do things. The higher self is the one which makes anything be what it is. Like, for example, a flower, When I look at a flower, what makes a flower a flower? There are when a flower is so fragrant, when a flower is so beautiful, when a flower is, it gives me so much of joy. What aspect of it does all that to me? That is the paraprakriti. That the essence of what makes a flower, the essence of what makes, say, a sandalwood smell so good, the essence of it, that is the higher cause. So we will come to that later, but I just wanted to introduce that, because in this shloka number 4, he talks only about the lower self, which is something we all can easily understand, right? So I wanted then, again, as a prelude to the next shloka, where he's talking about the higher self, this in Upanishads, that higher self, God, he is called as both the Jagat Karanam, or the cause of the universe. Okay. So it is that higher cause which makes this whole universe come alive. So that is the Jagat Karanam, which is the material cause. But along with the material cause, there is something called the intelligent cause, or the Nimitta Karanam. Nimitta Karanam is the thing, is the aspect of God which makes something to happen. So, for example, when the classic examples that are given, which of course you can take it to today's world too, is, like a pot. Okay, in order to make a pot, you need the material which makes the pot, but you also need the pot maker. The pot maker is the one who is making of the pot, correct? So you need the material cause, which is the Jagat Karanam, but you also need the Nimitta Karanam, or the intelligent cause. Both of them together really makes this entire creation. So that, or even if I take this desk on which I'm having this here, I need one which is the wood, and I need the carpenter to make both of them. Same thing for cooking a food or whatever. I need all the materials. I need myself who has to cook everything. So both of these together forms that ultimate cause which makes this whole world come by. So that is the cause which he's talking about. And one beautiful shloka from Mundaka Upanishad, Yathorna Nabhi Sujate Grinnate Cha, Yatha Prativyam Oshadayaha Sambhavanti, Yatha Sata Purushat Kesha Lomani, Tatha Ksharat Sambhavatiha Vishwam. So basically, he says, how that, I'll explain this with this thing here, with a spider web. Here, you see the spider which is basically creating this whole world. Actually, that is what in Mundaka Upanishad, he's explaining this spider web concept. The idea is, we have the spider which is making this whole world come through its own secretion. In its own, it secretes and it creates its web, and it is creating it also, isn't it? So a very beautiful example. It builds this whole place to stay using its own secretion, and it does it by itself. So that's how we look at this whole creation and how this world is all about. So that para prakriti, para is the Jagat Karanam, the cause for the universe, and it is Nimitta Karanam also. Nimitta Karanam, or the intelligent cause. We call that intelligent cause. Nimitta Karanam and Jagat Karanam. So that is what in the shloka, next one, where he says that what I just explained to you about the actual things that you are able to feel and you work and all that is my lower nature. But then I have something else, which is the higher shloka, higher thing, which is apare yamitis tvanyam, apare yamitis tvanyam, prakritim vidhi me param, prakritim vidhi me param, jiva bhuta mahabaho, jiva bhuta mahabaho, yayedam dharyate jagat, yayedam dharyate jagat. So the previous shloka explained about everything which is inert, correct? So they're all inert. I mean, even the mind, even the intellect. I know we think that, okay, I am able to think about so many things. I'm able to create. I'm able to complete this project. I have, created this patent. All that we say, oh, isn't my intellect really thinking, doing all this? But actually not. Even the intellect or the mind is only jada. It is inert. But what is making it think is this higher self, this absolute, this consciousness principle. So para prakriti. So that is why he's saying, apare iyam ita tu anyam prakriti, So this is my inferior nature or my lower nature. But know that there is something higher. And Prakritim Vidhi Me Param. There is something higher, which is Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho. Mahabaho is referring to Arjuna as, oh, Arjuna, who you're the mighty arm. Look at this. I'm telling you, that aspect of it, which gives that thing the essence of it, Yaya idam dharyate jagad, and by which this world is upheld, that is my higher self. So know that I'm not that the lower self that I told you. That is my lower self. I mean, that is part of me, but that's my lower self. But there's something higher than that. And that is what I want you to talk about. That is what I want to tell you. So that is my higher self, and this everything else is my lower self. So apare prakritim, I guess I put it again here just to show you that. So that aspect of it we saw. Now shloka number 6. Shloka number 6, where he says, then how are all these then really connected? So I will chant the shloka and we'll do it next week. I just have to finish a few minutes early today. But so he says, etadyo nini bhutani, etadyo nini bhutani, sarvani tyupadharaya, sarvani tyupadharaya, aham kritsnasya jagataha, aham kritsnasya jagataha, prabhava pralayastatha, prabhava pralayastatha. So he says, so ultimately both these things, what I just told you, the lower self and the higher self, they are actually now the womb, yoni, they're the womb of all these bhutanis, all these creatures that you see. Sarvani iti upadharya, know that. And aham kritsnasya jagataha, for this whole universe, I myself am the source. Aham kritsnasya jagataha. And pralayaha, I'm also prabhavaha pralayastata, I'm also the cause for the whole dissolution. So you can see how, there'll be a lot of questions, I'm sure, in your mind. How is that possible? So what is really this whole world about then? Is this world, just all the buildings and everything that I see? Or is there something else that is happening? Many times, when we are part of the creation, we don't pay attention to all this. It's just like, we give this example of when I'm sitting in the train or when I'm sitting in a plane, it's moving so fast. But I am not aware of all these things that is happening. But I have an opportunity to kind of stay back and look at the same thing and understand what it is. So that is what in these few shlokas you see, where Krishna is like, challenging Arjuna to look at the whole thing from outside the creation here, and understand what this whole creation is about. This creation, there is a lot of things that are being created, sustained, being destroyed, but I'm not paying attention to it. But this is what this whole world is about. Jagat, the word Jagat itself means jigga jigga, that it is always moving. There's always changes are happening, but I don't pay attention to it. I mean, we ourselves, our own body, has gone through so much of changes, but I'm not really paying attention to this. I'm just going with the flow, right? So that's what slowly he's introducing these shlokas. The next 6 shlokas also, up to 12, he's going to really talk about what is this whole creation about. Now he'll get into more specifics about the creation itself. So we'll stop here. And if you have any questions, we can also take that up. Or anything you want to ask now, or shall we stop and then? Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So next week we won't have class. I know it says May 10th here, but we'll actually meet on May 18th. Okay, let me just